The dwarf will jump. There was in a kingdom, a long time ago, a miller who had a beautiful daughter, who among her many qualities, possessed the expertise of knowing how to spin and sew beautifully. Both the miller's and his daughter's clothes were always perfectly crafted. Their farming neighbors and even some villagers wore their clothes for the miller's daughter to mend with her expertise. In those days the clothes were made by hand and people had very few clothes. So they mend, sew, and lie down over and over again. One day the king of those lands saw one of his servants in a clothes so careful and well done that he was even better sewn than his king's clothes. Upon learning how that was possible and knowing that it was the miller's daughter who did those wonders, she decided to go visit her by being distracted like she was walking through her lands. It must be said that this king was very mean, and liked to have many capes and shirts and bras and jackets. It was also very greedy, which are the people who always want to have more and more. Indeed, the king left his castle and went with his escort through the streets of the village. The villagers, although they wore clothes much less elegant than his, were better dressed than him. Wounded in his vanity, he went to the miller's house and began to chat. "Hello, good man," he told you. The miller was stunned, the king in his house. "Go," the king continued to speak, "must have been good harvesting, as I see you're wearing new clothes." "Oh, you see her like that again because my daughter has silk hands that everything she touches turns it into gold, so's that she's a cousin, mends that you don't notice it, twists the broken ones, and they look like new. Come on is so good at his work that if you gave him straw he would turn it into a golden thread and do wonders with his needle." The king, who was very greedy and although he had much wanted to have more, seeing the miller's answer, told him, "If that's the case, I'll take your daughter to my castle and weave for my gold dresses with the straw from the horse stable." "My lord," said the miller, "sorry. That is to say, when I said that everything turns it into gold, I meant that it is very rigged and sews beautifully." "Have you lied to your king?" asked angrily. No, my lord, but maybe I've been presumptuous." "Your daughter will come to the palace and there she will sew with straw costumes for her king. Whatever a lie you have told that she turns everything into gold, I will lock you and your daughter in the darkest cell of my palace." The sad, sorry miller watched as the soldiers took his daughter to the castle. Once they arrived at the castle, the king put the miller's daughter in a room with a wheel and a lot of straw. The wheels are gadgets where the threads were made in the old days. "In the morning I'll come and get what you've done," said the king, closing the door. The girl was very sad because though she knew how she could do thread with the straw of the stable, what would become of her? Thinking this, started to cry, heartbroken. Suddenly from the leftovers appeared a little man who jumped through the pile of straw. "What's the matter with you?" he asked. "You are so sad and weepy." "The king has locked me in this room and pretends that with its straw he weaves threads of gold with the wheel." "And you don't know how to do it?" the man asked him. "Of course not," she told her. "Who can weave gold threads with straw?" "I know it," told the little man, "but if I do that for you, what can you give me in return?" She was surprised that this man could do such a marvel with straw, and touching his neck offered him a necklace he had. The little man, taking the necklace, stood with the straw and the wheel and laughs. Ross was making threads of gold. When he had finished turning the straw into gold, thread vanished as it had appeared. The next morning when the king entered the room, he was stunned. There was no straw, but a skein of golden thread next to the wheel. "You've done it," said the king. She was quiet. The king looked at her and for the first time saw a beautiful woman, and inside him something awoke. We said the king was very greedy and always wanted to have more and more. That night he locked the girl up again, but this time with more straw than the day before. When he closed the door, the king was sad because in his heart he thought it was not correct what he was doing with the girl. What was happening to him? That night the girl again began to cry, thinking about how cold and dark she had to be the castle cell where the king wanted to lock her up. After a while the little man appeared again, jumping through the straw. "Has the king locked you up again?" he asked. "Yes. What will I do?" Ella replied. "If I meet again for you, what will you give me in return?" She touched her neck, but the necklace had already given it to her. Then looking at her hands, she saw a ring on one of her fingers and offered it to her as payment for her work. The little man took the ring and got on again with the straw and the wheel and laughs. Ross was making threads of gold. When he finished, his work vanished without saying goodbye. When the next morning the king appeared in the room, again he was stunned. There was a skein of golden thread by the side of the wheel, but this time he smiled at the girl and his gesture became soft. But to pass that greed could even more than the love he was beginning to have for his captive, and told him, "Tonight you will weave for me more gold," and having said that closed the door. But sadness invaded her heart and thought that the girl did not deserve what she was doing to her. That night the miller's daughter searched through her clothes to see if she had anything to offer the little man when she appeared jumping through the straw, but she found nothing had already given her all the valuables she possessed. So she began to cry, thinking that now, yes, the king would lock her in the cell. When the little man showed up, she was heartbroken. "Why are you crying this time?" asked him. "I just don't have anything to offer you anymore," she answered. "Although tonight you shingle the straw to turn it into a golden thread, I won't be able to offer you anything, and this time I see myself in the castle cell." The little man looked at her and gestured at thinking about everything that was going on. "I have something to propose to you," he said. "I'll make a golden thread tonight with the straw in the room, and in return I only ask you to give me your first child when I'm born." She got scared. "Give her son? How could you give your child?" Reasoned for a while and said, "How long will it take me to get married? I don't even have a suitor, and thinking that would be in a long time, and maybe for those." The little man would have forgotten the deal. "I accept," he replied. The next morning the king showed up again in the room, but this time he brought a tray of hot milk and rolls for the girl to have breakfast. He was smiling, and although the gold thread was instead of the straw next to the wheel, he no longer looked at him but started talking to the miller's daughter. He asked her to live with him in the castle and installed her in a beautiful room overlooking the palace garden. He no longer asked her to make gold threads with the straw. They over time fell in love and got married. Soon the girl became pregnant. This is what is said when a baby is being weighed, and when she was about to give birth, she remembered the promise she had made to the little man. It's been a long time, he thought. I don't think he remembers the deal we made in that room. To his surprise, that same night the little man appeared to him. "You don't cry anymore," he said. "I see you've married the king, and he hasn't made you weave any more gold thread with the straw. Do you remember the deal we made?" She looked at him scared and weepy. "Yes, I remember, but, look, now I have more jewelry to give you. I have rings and necklaces. I even have a crown that you're sure to like, but please don't take away my son. I know I promised you, but," and began to cry heartbrokenly. The little man watched her and told her, "All right, we'll make a deal. I'll be back in a week, and the only thing that's going to change my mind is that when I get back you'll call me by my name." That said, he disappeared. The girl kept thinking, what would be her name? Pedro? Antonio? Lucas? No, it couldn't be a common name, but I wouldn't have proposed that deal to him. Very concerned, she sent a palace entourage to go through every corner of the kingdom asking the names of all the inhabitants to take note of, and in turn ask about the famous little man who had made that proposal to her, thinking that perhaps some would have heard of the man who turned straw into gold. One by one they returned the entourage to the palace and brought lists with the names of all the villagers. Camisito, Fork, Listen, Chanquito, Pantalona, but of jumping little meant nothing. Rinjarenga, Kila de Cocojo, Filibertio, but of gentlemen who spun straw nothing. Pimpura Pampa, Lucifornia, but of gold converters nothing at all. She was very distraught. What could she do if the little man came back and didn't know his real name? Would you really take your son? And at the end of the day, the last of the pages she had sent across the kingdom with her list of names returned. She took it and began reading it. Washing machine, Phytolithic, Coracina. As he did the page, he told him that when he was back towards the palace, he sat near the river that runs near the village, and in the distance heard and saw a little man jumping down the grass, singing and saying, "It is even unconstitutable rumplstinskins." She opened her eyes like plates. That was the name of the little man. At night she was waiting to sit in her room, and soon the little man showed up. Well, he said, "You know what my name is at last?" She said, "Your name is California." No, 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 he said, the little man. Your name is Lamparadio. No, 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 no. Hung, your name is Pimpirapompo. No, 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 no. Your name is Rumplestin. The little man was dumb with surprise, knew his name, opened his eyes in amazement, and disappeared. It was never heard from him again. She gave birth to a beautiful prince and named him after him. Good considering the names they had in that kingdom. What do you think was the name he gave his son?